Do you think you know what survival really is? Do you imagine native life as a romantic hunt at dawn or ancient wisdom shared around a campfire? Forget it. Get ready to stare not at myths, but at a grim, hopeless, sticky reality. There is no heroism here, no victories, no beauty. Only endless dirt, hunger, fear, cold, and the same mind numbing routine where every night is a battle and every morning is disappointment. You will walk these paths and taste despair, betrayal, powerlessness, and see just how thin the line between life and nothingness really is. Welcome to the real, everyday life of a native pathfinder. Are you ready to make it to the end of this story? But before you get comfortable, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you are watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing who has joined us. Now get cozy. We're starting. You wake up before the sun even thinks about touching the horizon. That is not a poetic sunrise, by the way. The inside of your lodge is freezing. The animal skins hanging from the poles do nothing to stop the wind from sneaking through every single crack. You pull your worn blanket closer to your body, but your toes remain numb and your back aches from sleeping on yet another bed of half rotten pine needles. Your dreams were not pleasant or mystical. They were full of the usual nightmares about hunger, your children's hollow eyes, the time you almost drowned trying to fish in the early spring, and the face of your brother lost to the last winter. You open your eyes and the dreams fade, but the pain in your chest and the ache in your joints remain as reminders that reality, in its infinite generosity, is not much better than nightmares. There is no gentle way to wake up here. There is no rooster crowing, no friendly call from your mother or wife, just the damp, miserable sound of the wind howling and the shuffling of bodies as the rest of the camp stirs. You do not get up quickly. That would be a waste of energy, and energy is a precious currency when you have so little to spend. You are already hungry, not in the way a settler or a wealthy merchant in a distant city might feel after missing a meal, but in the way that your entire body aches for real food. Your stomach grumbles like an angry animal, but you have learned to ignore it. Hunger is a constant companion, a second shadow, and you have learned to move through your days with it gnawing at your insides. Your first thoughts are not about the beauty of the forest or the promise of a new day. They are about what needs to be done so you and your family might make it through this one more day without succumbing to sickness, hunger, or violence. You listen. Always you listen. The wind, the river, the distant caw of a raven. Are there footsteps outside? Is that the sound of your neighbor already up, shuffling toward the dying fire? Or is it something else, something that should not be here? You cannot tell yet, and you do not want to know, not before you have to. You rise slowly, every joint protesting, and you reach for your old moccasins. They are barely more than scraps now, full of holes, the soles thin enough to feel every rock, every root beneath your feet. But you put them on because bare feet on frozen ground would be madness. You glance over at your family, still huddled in uneasy sleep, faces half hidden in blankets, patched more times than you can count. You do not speak. Words are wasted in the morning. Everyone knows what must be done. Your eldest son, barely old enough to be called a man, is already awake. He does not meet your eyes. He does not need to. You both know the routine, have lived it day after day, season after season. If he is lucky, today will only be cold, not deadly. You step outside, and the world is nothing but mist and shadow. The sky is dull and heavy, offering no promise of sunlight or warmth. The ground is muddy. Yesterday's rain turned to frost at the edges. You can smell smoke, what is left of last night's fire, now only embers. You poke at it with a stick, trying to coax a few more moments of heat before it dies for good. You shiver, but you do not complain. Complaints are pointless. The others begin to emerge from their lodges, one by one, all wearing the same expression, exhaustion mixed with grim determination. No one jokes, no one sings, no one reminisces about better times. You look at their faces and see your own reflected, hollow eyes, chapped lips, and the stubborn refusal to lie down and give up. The first task of the day is always the same: survive. Everything else is a distraction. You try to remember the last time you felt truly warm, or full, or safe. You cannot. Those feelings belong to stories, and stories are not much use to you anymore. You wish, not for the last time, that you had been born as someone else, somewhere else. But this is your life. This is your morning. This is how you begin every day before the sun even dares to rise. You do not get a moment to savor your misery. Survival demands action, and the first ritual of every day is to bring the fire back to life. The fire is the thin line between you and the endless cold, between you and a night that would swallow your camp without a second thought. It is a thankless task, but it is your duty, and you accept it the way you accept everything, with quiet resentment and dull routine. You crouch near the blackened stones, feeling the brittle cold seep up through your feet and into your bones. The embers from last night are pitiful, barely clinging to existence, buried under a crust of gray ash. You poke at them gently, pretending to hope, but you already know this will be harder than usual. It rained yesterday. The world is damp. The little that is left of your precious tinder is almost useless, each strand heavy with moisture and reluctant to catch a spark. Your hands are not steady. Years of cold, of hunger, of pointless labor have turned your fingers stiff and unreliable. You rub them together, trying to summon feeling back into your knuckles. It does not work, of course. You reach into the small pouch where you keep what passes for fire starting material: a few dry leaves, a handful of brittle grass, a sliver of birch bark that you have been saving for a truly desperate morning. Is this morning desperate enough? You decide it is. You arrange the pathetic pile as carefully as a mother swaddling a newborn. It is your one fragile hope for warmth. The flintstone is almost worn smooth from years of striking, but you clutch it anyway. The knife you use is little more than a shard, but it will have to do. You strike once, and nothing happens. The spark is feeble, barely brighter than your will to live. You strike again, and again, and again. With every failed attempt, you think about how easily settlers in their wooden houses call fire into being. Matches, lamps, even candles bought from traders. You almost laugh, except laughter wastes breath, and you cannot spare it. Here, every breath is earned. Here, fire is not a comfort, but a test. Your breath curls in the air. Your fingers throb. You want to shout at the wind, at the ancestors, at the sheer stupidity of a world where your existence hangs on the whim of a few damp twigs and a reluctant spark. But you say nothing. You strike again, and finally, miracle of miracles, a spark lands true. A faint curl of smoke teases upward. The bark catches, barely. You lean in, breath shallow, praying that the air itself will not turn against you now. You blow softly, fanning the fragile hint of life into something more. You know this routine, know exactly how much is too much, how little will fail. There is no heroism here, only grim expertise earned by repetition and desperation. The fire grows, first as a whisper, then as a sigh. Eventually, the tiny flame takes hold, licking at the grass, climbing hungrily toward the leaves. Around you, the camp pretends not to watch, but everyone is watching. Everyone knows that if you fail, you all shiver. You all start the day with defeat. When the flames finally take hold, there is no cheer, no praise, no sigh of relief, only a silent agreement that the minimum has been accomplished. The bare line of survival has not yet been crossed. You have done your job. You stand, shaking ash from your hands, feeling the heat sting your cheeks for the first time since you woke. You are not proud. You are not relieved. You are just tired. Tired as only someone who knows there is no end to this struggle can be. The smoke stings your eyes, and for a moment you pretend it is the reason they are wet. But you do not allow yourself the luxury of tears or anger or anything that would waste even more of your limited energy. Your family gathers around the weak fire. You see the disappointment in their faces, not at you, but at life itself. The children wait for warmth that will not really come. The elders shuffle closer in hope that the pain in their bones will fade. Everyone is disappointed, but nobody blames you. Misery is a communal burden, distributed evenly, respected in its endlessness. As the morning drags forward, you are already thinking about the next task, the next ordeal. The fire is alive, for now, but it is never safe, never certain, just like you. You sit back on your haunches and look at the bleak world beyond the glow of your tiny flame. Everything out there is gray, wet, indifferent. The only thing that matters is that the day has begun, and the fire did not betray you, at least, not yet. You do not thank the fire. That would be ridiculous. You do not trust it either. You know tomorrow you will repeat this, and the day after that, and the day after that, until the end of your miserable, beautiful, insignificant existence. You would like to imagine that with the fire started, your morning gets easier. But survival is a chain, and every link is just as heavy as the last. No fire can make up for the absence of clean water, and so you face your next test, the daily water run. You tell yourself it is just a walk. It is never just a walk. The camp's water is a problem that never gets solved. The river, which once ran clear and wide, now limps along, sluggish and brown. Every step toward it is a reminder of what was and what is. You pick up the battered birch bark bucket. You have patched it so many times that it looks more like a desperate experiment than a vessel. The handle is frayed, but it still holds, just like you. You trudge out of camp, feet sinking into the cold mud, the wet grass soaking through your worn moccasins. There is no path, only a route remembered in your bones. A sloping stretch of brush, a cluster of old stones, the bend in a fallen log, every feature as familiar and irritating as the faces in your own camp. Your breath comes out in short, silent puffs. The world is quieter than it should be, and you do not trust quiet. You are not alone. Not really. Every member of the camp makes this walk, one after another, day after day. You cross paths with others, a hunched grandmother, two sullen children bickering as they go, a cousin limping from an old wound. Nobody greets you. Everyone is focused on the task ahead. Water does not wait for pleasantries. The woods are not your friend. Each step is a negotiation with the ground. Will it hold, or will you slip and twist an ankle? Will you reach the river before some predator, animal or human, decides you look like easy prey? There is always the possibility that today is the day you vanish, swallowed up without a trace, your name reduced to a cautionary tale around the campfire. That, or you simply come back empty handed and watch your children's lips crack and bleed for want of a single cup. Today, the forest smells of rot and old leaves. The wind carries the scent of something dead, but you do not look for it. You have enough reminders of mortality as it is. Your hands clench tighter around the bucket. Your joints ache with every movement, a symphony of pain that no one ever applauds. After what feels like an eternity, you reach the river. It is as ugly as you remember, choked with weeds, the bank slick and treacherous. The water itself is never clear. It swirls with silt, carrying the memory of every upstream disaster, a broken beaver dam, a flooded nest, last night's rain that turned the whole world to soup. You know that you must drink from it anyway. Boil it, they always say, as if there is enough firewood for luxuries like that. You kneel on the slippery stones, the chill biting through your knees. You try not to look at your own reflection. Your face is not the one you remember. Hollow cheeks, Sunken eyes, a perpetual mask of fatigue and resignation. You scoop water carefully, watching as tiny insects scatter and bits of plant matter swirl inside your bucket. You hope, foolishly, that today's water will not taste quite as foul as yesterday's. Behind you, the woods are silent. You tell yourself it is fine, that nothing lurks in the shadows, but you know better. Sometimes you find prints along the bank, bear, wolf, or worse. Sometimes the marks are made by other people, ones you do not recognize, ones who would just as soon slit your throat for a piece of dried meat or a trinket as say hello. So you keep your head low and your senses sharp. On the walk back, the bucket feels heavier than before, the water sloshing dangerously close to the rim. You try to move quickly, but quickly is not safe. Your legs are already tired from the endless parade of mornings just like this one. By the time you reach camp, your arms are shaking, and the water has lost some to the ground, soaked up by the earth that never gets enough. There is no applause, no celebration, just the quiet relief of having finished one more task. You hand off the bucket to whoever needs it first, a mother, an elder, a child who looks at you with eyes already too old for their face. Nobody thanks you. Gratitude is another luxury, and you cannot afford it. Later, when you sip from a crude cup, the water is as bitter as the rest of your day. It tastes of mud and decay, and you try not to think about what else might be in it. You hope it does not make you sick, but hope is thin in a place like this. If you are lucky, tomorrow will be just as bad, not worse. You watch as others make the same journey over and over, each return a small, silent victory in a world that offers none. You know you will do it all again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until your feet can no longer remember the way, or until the water finally runs out. This is the rhythm of your life. Walk, haul, return, repeat, forever. The river does not care, the forest does not care, and most days neither do you. Once the fire is coaxed into fragile existence, and the muddy water fetched from the river, the next daily ordeal begins. The miserable ritual of breakfast. There is a persistent myth, perhaps kept alive by those who have never known hunger, that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You know the truth. Breakfast is just another struggle, another test, another reminder that comfort is a story told by people with full bellies and soft beds. You sit by the flickering fire, watching the pale flames dance in the gray morning light. Around you, the camp stirs slowly, each person pretending not to notice how empty the food baskets have become. There is no abundance here, no feast waiting to greet you. Only the remains of last night's thin, greasy broth, its surface shimmering with the memory of fat that disappeared long ago. Someone ladles it into a cracked wooden bowl for you. The steam is weak, the scent is more memory than reality, but you take it anyway. You always do. You remember when you were younger, when the forests were kinder and game was less scarce. Then Breakfast sometimes meant roasted fish or fresh berries, or at least something with flavor. Now, it is what you can scavenge. Sometimes a handful of withered roots, sometimes a bitter mushroom you hope is not poisonous, sometimes a squirrel so lean and tough that chewing it feels like gnawing leather. Today, you get the roots. They are pale and stringy, half frozen from the cold night, but they are edible. You peel them with your knife, fingers stiff and clumsy, and drop them into your bowl. The roots do not taste of much, which is better than tasting of rot. Sometimes you wish you could close your eyes and imagine something better, but hunger does not care for imagination. Around the fire, nobody speaks. Children huddle close, clutching their own small portions, their eyes hollow and already resigned. The elders mutter about past years, their voices bitter, their memories perhaps exaggerated, but never cheerful. The women move quietly, rationing what little is left, knowing that dinner will be even more meager if anyone asks for seconds now. The broth is cold before you finish it. The roots crunch between your teeth, and you find yourself wishing for even a pinch of salt. Salt is rare, a treasure that comes only when some brave soul manages to trade with distant strangers, risking everything for a sack that will disappear far too soon. For now, your food is bland and your body is grateful for even that. You eat slowly, not to savor, but to make it last. The fire pops and hisses as someone tosses in another stick, trying to pretend that this small act can make the meal feel less empty. You know better. You have learned the difference between hunger and starvation, and you have learned to be grateful for the former. There is a certain camaraderie in this misery. You do not speak of it, but everyone feels it. The silent agreement to get through another day together, to share what little there is, to pretend for a few moments that things are not as bad as they are. It is a lie, but it is a necessary one. After breakfast, you rinse your bowl with a few drops of precious water and tuck it away. Nothing is wasted, not even the scraps. The children look for crumbs, and the dogs, skinny and half wild, sniff hopefully at your feet. You give them nothing. You cannot afford kindness. You rise stiffly and stretch, feeling every muscle protest. You glance around at your companions, faces drawn and tired, eyes avoiding one another, each person retreating into their own private thoughts. There are no stories told here, no songs sung, only the sounds of chewing and the crackle of the fire. You wonder, for the thousandth time, how many more mornings you will endure like this. You try to remember what it felt like to wake up without hunger gnawing at your belly. You cannot. That memory, like so many others, has faded into the gray fog of survival. There is no time for self pity. The day's work waits, and you are already late. The children scatter to their chores, the elders retreat to their corners, and you gather what little you need for the next ordeal. There is nothing to look forward to, except perhaps the knowledge that tonight's meal will be no worse than this morning's, if you are lucky. Breakfast is over, the day has truly begun. Hunger, your oldest companion, will walk beside you, whispering reminders of all you lack, and you will listen because you have no choice. There is no glory in being the first to step into the woods each day. You know this. Everyone knows this. Yet it is your lot, your honor as a pathfinder, to walk ahead of the others, to find signs of game, to face whatever the forest has in store. Nobody envies you. Some days you do not even envy yourself. After the meager breakfast, you pull your worn coat tighter and check the few tools you own: a blunt stone knife, a handful of dull arrowheads, a bow that creaks with every movement. The fletching on your arrows is ragged, but you smooth it down, pretending for a moment that these details might make the difference between failure and survival. They rarely do, but routine is all that keeps you moving. You move through the thinning edge of the forest, feeling every eye on your back. The elders pretend not to watch, but you know they are counting on you to find something, anything. The children glance up with hollow hope, and your fellow hunters busy themselves with idle chores, grateful that it is not their turn today. You do not blame them. You would do the same. The path ahead is all mud and tangled roots. The rain from the night before has left everything slick and treacherous. You step carefully, eyes searching for fresh tracks, droppings, any sign that a deer, a rabbit, or even a half starved squirrel has passed through. Sometimes you wonder if you are looking for food or just proof that life outside your camp still exists. As you go deeper, the forest closes around you. The air is heavy, full of damp rot and the memory of old storms. Birdsong is rare, and when it does come, it is sharp and sudden, less a welcome and more a warning. Every branch seems to claw at your skin, snagging on your sleeves, tearing at the frayed edges of your clothing. You do not mind. You stopped caring about comfort a long time ago. Your breath grows shallow. You know every step could be your last. You are not the only hunter in these woods, and not all hunters walk on two legs. Bears roam these trees, some as hungry as you. Wolves move in silent packs, and their hunger is always sharper than yours. Sometimes you find footprints in the mud that are not animal at all, wide, splayed, the telltale sign of strangers. Strangers are the most dangerous game of all. They can disappear into the brush and reappear behind you, blade in hand, as silent and unforgiving as the grave. You pause, listening. The wind moves through the trees, carrying the distant echo of voices from camp. For a second, you imagine the safety of numbers, but you know it is an illusion. In the forest, you are alone, always. Even if others follow, it is your feet that must touch the trail first, your eyes that must read the ground, your nose that must smell the rot and the musk of animals. You force yourself forward. Every sense is stretched thin. The light filtering through the canopy is gray and weak, and your world is nothing but shadows and shifting shapes. Every stump becomes a crouching beast. every flicker in the corner of your eye a lurking threat. Your hands sweat around your bow, but your grip remains steady. Fear is a daily companion, but you have learned to ignore its clammy touch. You find a patch of flattened grass, a sign maybe, or just the mark of last night's wind. You kneel, running your fingers over the earth, pretending to understand what it tells you. The truth is, the signs are often unclear, and every mistake could mean another empty night for your camp. Sometimes you wonder if the ancestors ever felt so blind, or if they just lied better than you do now. As you rise, a flock of crows bursts from a nearby tree, black shapes swirling in the damp air. You watch them fly, half hoping they will lead you to something living, half dreading what they might have found. The living are rare in these woods, and the dead are never far away. You press on, marking trees with subtle notches for those who will follow. It is a pointless gesture, but habits die hard. Each mark is a message. I am still alive, at least for now. The world outside your camp is cold and indifferent. It does not care if you live or die, if your people eat or starve. The forest keeps its secrets, and you are just another shadow passing through. Sometimes, when you are alone like this, you remember the stories of pathfinders, great heroes who found herds of bison, who brought back game enough for a feast. Those days are gone, if they ever existed at all. Now, your story is one of smaller victories: a bird's egg, a handful of wild onions, the memory of a rabbit caught months ago. There is no heroism left, only routine and fear, and the stubborn refusal to die quietly. You push deeper into the woods, not because you believe you will find food, but because there is no alternative. To stop is to give up, and even after all these years, you are not ready for that. Your boots squelch in the mud, your breath clouds in the chill air, and the forest waits, silent, uncaring, eternal. This is your task. This is your honor. You are the first into the woods and the last to return. The first few steps into the real deep woods are always the worst. The ground, already waterlogged at the edge of camp, becomes a mosaic of thick, cold mud and slippery moss, each patch waiting for you to lose your balance. Your moccasins, already battered and thin, offer little protection. Within minutes, your feet are soaked. You can feel the mud squelching between your toes, cold seeping up to your shins, and it makes you wonder if this is what the world feels like when it is digesting you bit by bit. You keep your head low and your eyes sharp, scanning the muck for anything that looks out of place. A tuft of fur caught on a branch, the faint trace of hooves pressed into the muck, a snapped twig pointing the way. Sometimes the signs are real, sometimes they are just wishful thinking. You have learned not to trust your hunger, which is always eager to see food where there is only shadow. The cold does not help. It creeps through every layer of your clothing, turns your joints stiff and your muscles slow. Each breath feels like you are swallowing knives. It is the kind of cold that finds its way into your bones and settles in for the season, making you older than your years and meaner than your circumstances. You think about the warm seasons, brief, full of biting insects and more sweat than comfort, and you almost miss them, almost. The forest is quiet this morning, except for the distant cawing of a raven and the subtle whisper of wind through the bare branches. Silence in the woods can mean two things: either everything is gone or something is waiting. You try to tell yourself it is the former, but you grip your bow a little tighter just in case. There is no path, not really, only animal trails and the faint memory of footsteps, yours and those who came before. You step from root to root, trying to avoid the worst of the mud, but eventually you accept that there is no point. Your legs are splattered up to your knees, your clothes weighed down with damp filth. You tell yourself that if you keep moving, maybe the cold will stop bothering you, but you know it will not. The fear is always there. Not the sharp, exciting fear of a sudden threat, but the grinding, everyday dread that you might walk for hours and find nothing. That the last deer wandered through weeks ago, that every animal worth eating has learned to stay far away from the hungry, desperate two-legged hunters who haunt these woods. Sometimes you think about what would happen if you simply sat down and did not get back up, but you never do. You hear a crack behind you and you freeze. The sound is not loud, but in the empty woods it feels like thunder. You hold your breath, listen hard. Is it an animal, another hunter, something worse? You wait. Nothing moves, just the wind, just the endless sucking mud. Your heart pounds so loudly, you are sure the trees can hear it. After a moment, you move on. You have to. The ground here is full of hidden dangers, sinkholes, old animal burrows, rotting logs that collapse under your weight. Every step is a negotiation. How much risk are you willing to take for the chance of finding food? How much longer can you afford to waste energy before you have to turn back with nothing but an empty stomach and more disappointment for your people? You pause to inspect a promising patch of ground. There are marks here, maybe deer, maybe just the scarring of last night's rain. You bend down, fingers tracing the lines, feeling for that subtle difference that means the difference between a meal and a wasted day. You smell the earth. It smells like rot and old leaves. You close your eyes, listen for the faintest sign: breath, hoof, heart. There is nothing but your own ragged breathing. You move on, always forward, never quite hopeful, but never quite defeated. You know the others are waiting back at camp, pretending not to watch for your return, pretending they do not care, but you feel the weight of their hunger pressing on your back with every step. As the morning drags on, the cold seeps deeper and your limbs grow heavier. Your mind plays tricks on you. Was that a shape moving in the distance, or just another shadow? Was that a whisper of furpers against bark, or just the sigh of the wind? You cannot afford to guess wrong. Hunger makes you foolish, and foolishness gets you killed. You stop for a moment and lean against a tree, feeling the bark scratch your cheek. You wonder, briefly, how many generations have pressed their bodies to this same tree desperate for a moment's rest, a moment's warmth, a moment of anything but the endless, grinding struggle. You think about the people who will come after you, and you hope, foolishly, that they will have it easier. You doubt it. You push yourself upright and keep moving. The forest, the mud, the cold, the fear, they are all your companions, as loyal and unyielding as any friend you ever had. You do not fight them. You just walk and walk and walk until the day gives up on you or you find what you are looking for. Usually, it is the day that gives up first. You know you will keep going because stopping is the only real failure, and even after all this, you are not ready to give up. Not yet. You want to believe that today will be different, that today the forest will show mercy, maybe even reward your careful searching with something edible and slow. But, as always, the woods are indifferent at best and cruel at worst. Your nose is numb, your breath hangs in the air, and you know, because you have learned it the hard way, that something is watching you long before you see it. At first, it is just a feeling, the prickling at the back of your neck, the way every sound seems to hush itself when you step near, the tension in your shoulders that never really leaves. You know better than to dismiss these signs. The forest is full of eyes, and not all of them belong to prey. The tracks you follow, shallow, winding, half washed away by the rain, begin to look promising. You squat down, squint, run your fingers along the prints. Deer? Maybe. It would be a miracle, but you know better than to count on miracles. You follow anyway, because you have nothing else. You creep forward, careful, slow, senses straining. That is when you hear it, not the timid scuffle of a rabbit or the soft tread of a deer. It is something heavier, more certain, less afraid. You freeze. There is a rustle, a low growl so soft you almost believe you imagined it, but you know you did not. You look up, bow raised, heart hammering so hard you fear it might give you away. There it is. A wolf, no, not the romantic creature of fables, but a real one, lean, hungry, with a coat matted by mud and old scars. You are not special prey. You are just another animal in its territory, just as desperate, just as dangerous. The wolf stares at you with yellow eyes that do not blink. For a moment, you share an understanding. Neither of you wants to be here. Neither of you has a choice. You grip your dull knife. The bow feels useless now. The wolf takes a slow step forward, hackles raised. You do not move. Every muscle in your body is a drawn string, stretched to the breaking point. You remember all the old stories, how the brave pathfinder stared down the beast, how he triumphed with cunning and strength. You know those stories are mostly lies, or at best, half truths told by people who never bled. The wolf lunges, teeth bared. There is no time for thought. You slash with the knife, feel it catch on fur and skin. The wolf yelps, veers to the side, and you stumble backward, mud splattering up your legs. It is not over. The wolf circles, wary now, blood trickling down its flank. You know the pain. It is the same you feel in your own bones. The fight is not a battle of glory. It is ugly, desperate, clumsy. You swing, miss, stagger. The wolf snaps at your arm. You feel the teeth pierce through the thin leather. You howl, less out of pain, more out of anger, frustration, sheer exhaustion. You jab the knife again, this time catching the animal in the ribs. It retreats, snarling, and then, miracle of miracles, it flees. You stand there, chest heaving, blood running down your sleeve, hands shaking. The wolf's howls fade into the distance. You wait, half expecting it to return, but the woods settle into their old silence. You look at your wound. It is deep, but not fatal. Not this time. You sit in the mud, tasting bile, feeling the ache in every muscle. Your knife is bent, your bow lost somewhere behind you. You know that you are lucky. You know that luck is just another word for not dead yet. After a long while, you get up. You are not a hero. There are no songs for the pathfinder who survives by the skin of his teeth, only more scars, more reasons to keep your sleeves rolled down. You find your bow, clean your knife as best you can on the wet grass. You spit into the mud, half in anger, half in respect for the wolf who fought as hard as you. Your hands are slick with blood, but you keep moving. The tracks you were following are gone, trampled in the fight. The forest is still hungry, and so are you. You think about what would have happened if you had lost. How long your absence would go unnoticed. How long before someone else would have to take your place, risk their neck, lose their blood to the mud and teeth of this place. It is not a comforting thought, but you keep moving anyway. You do not look for triumph. You do not look for meaning. You look for anything you can bring home. One scrawny bird, a handful of mushrooms, a broken bone that you can boil for flavor. You know now, more than ever, that every meal is a prize won from the jaws of something else. You limp on, one more wound for the collection, one more reminder that in these woods you are never alone. Not really. With your arms still throbbing and your heart pounding from the encounter with the wolf, you push deeper into the woods, following any faint hope of game. Your head is buzzing, half with pain, half with the knowledge that empty hands are not just a disappointment, they are a silent accusation. No one ever says it aloud, but every step you take with nothing to show for it is another weight for your back, another unspoken question in your tribe's eyes. Why did you come back at all? You trudge through the undergrowth, passing by the traps you and others set the evening before, snares fashioned from whatever scraps of cord or vine could be spared, baited with the most meager crumbs, positioned with more desperation than skill. You squat beside the first snare, hope flickering in your chest despite all reason. Empty. Not even a tuft of fur or a feather to prove anything passed this way. The ground is untouched, except by the ghosts of your own muddy prints. You force yourself to the next trap, and then the next. Each one tells the same story: absence, futility, the dull mockery of nature. In one, the bait is gone, the trap unsprung, as if the animals themselves have learned your tricks and now pass through the woods like spirits, untouchable, invisible. It occurs to you that perhaps the woods are not empty of life. Maybe the life out there is just clever enough to avoid the likes of you. By the time you check the last trap, the day has shifted from a numb, gray morning to an even grayer, heavier afternoon. Your legs ache. Your stomach feels like it is eating itself, and the makeshift bandage on your arm itches in a way that makes you worry about infection. You ignore it. You have to. You turn back toward camp, dragging your feet, weighed down not only by exhaustion, but by failure. You rehearse in your mind the silent apologies you will not speak. There are no words that can make up for coming back empty handed, not for the children, not for the elders, not for the shivering women whose eyes follow every morsel of food as if they can will it into their mouths. As you approach the edge of camp, you become aware of the quiet, not the restful hush of safety, but the brittle silence of waiting, of hope stretched so thin it could snap. Faces appear in the gloom, a mother holding her infant, both eyes enormous and expectant, an elder wrapped in rags, squinting through the smoke from the weak morning fire. The other hunters, pretending to busy themselves with mending gear or tending the fire, but really just watching you. You hold up your hands, palms empty, as if to show that you are not hiding anything. You feel the shame crawl up your spine, a familiar, burning sensation that no amount of reasoning or ritual can ease. There are no accusations, not allowed, but you see them in the lines around every mouth, the sag of every shoulder. Hunger is a language of its own, and it is fluent here. A few of the children come closer, peering up at you with faces that are already learning disappointment. You look away because you cannot stand to see your own failure reflected in their eyes. You mutter something about tracks, about bad luck, about the wolf, but not about how close it was, and you sit by the fire, letting the heat warm your hands, but not your spirit. You glance at the other traps, checked by others, just as empty. A few meager finds are pooled together in the center of camp. A single half-starved squirrel, some bitter berries, a handful of limp grass shoots. Not enough. Never enough. The women argue quietly about how to stretch the meal. The elders suggest new places for traps, as if it is strategy, not luck, that decides who eats and who starves. Someone blames the spirits, someone else mutters about the land's curse, and all the while the sky presses down, low and heavy, as if threatening to bury the camp itself. You sit there, staring at the flames, feeling their feeble warmth. The day seems longer than it should be, as if time itself is mocking you. Every minute you do not find food, the hunger grows, not just in your body, but in the whole camp. It shapes every look, every movement, every breath. You think about sneaking out again, searching just a little longer. Maybe you could get lucky. Maybe the next trap, the next patch of ground will have something waiting. but your body is spent. Your arm throbs. Your mind reels with exhaustion. There is nothing left in you for hope. You wait for the others to return. Some do not. Those who come back are like you, empty, apologetic, eyes fixed on the ground. You all sit together, huddled in the gathering gloom, each person pretending not to notice the hunger gnawing at their own stomach while listening for the distant, miraculous sound of a whoop, the sound of someone, anyone, returning with food. It never comes. When the meal is finally prepared, such as it is barely enough for a taste, let alone satisfaction. You swallow your share, barely noticing the flavor, and feel a kind of numbness settle in. There is no anger, only resignation. Hunger is not a crisis here, it is tradition. When night falls, you find yourself staring at the darkness beyond the fire, imagining the silent world outside, full of unseen, untouchable life. You wonder, as you always do, how many more days you can return with nothing before you become another empty space around the fire. Forgotten, replaced, a ghost like so many others who went hungry and never came back. You say nothing because there is nothing to say. You have done your best, and it was not enough. It almost never, so almost never is. The sun barely lifts above the tree line before your energy is gone, replaced by a dull, insistent ache in every limb. You have spent hours trudging through mud, staring at empty traps, fighting off hunger and cold, and now returned to camp with nothing. You find your exhaustion is a heavy, physical presence, an invisible animal wrapped around your neck, weighing you down, and yet there is no real rest. Not for a pathfinder, not for anyone. The camp is quieter than ever, every person half shrunk into themselves. Some huddle by the fire, poking at the embers, hoping to draw out a little more heat, a little more comfort. You know that comfort is an illusion. Your bones hurt from more than just the cold. Your muscles tremble, not with fear, but with fatigue that goes deeper than flesh. You glance around for a place to sit that is not already claimed. There is a tree stump near the edge of camp, half rotten but sturdy enough. You lower yourself onto it with a sigh, letting your head droop forward, arms resting on your knees. Your eyes drift closed, not out of laziness, but because your body simply cannot hold them open anymore. But real sleep is a luxury you cannot afford. You hover in that strange twilight between waking and dreaming, alert to every sound around you. Somewhere, a child cries. Further off, someone coughs, a wet, ragged sound that makes you wince, because sickness is an even greater threat than hunger in this world. Your ears catch the crack of a branch, and you jerk upright, heart pounding. Just a dog, rooting for scraps. Nothing worth the panic. You try to drift again, but the worries in your head are relentless. There are always more chores. The fire must be tended, tools must be checked, clothing repaired, water fetched again. There is no rotation of duties here. If something needs doing, you do it, or it does not get done. Idleness is for the weak or the dead. Around you, others struggle the same way. The elders doze, but never deeply. Their bodies twitch with old aches and older memories. Children try to play, their laughter thin and forced, breaking off quickly when an adult's glare reminds them of the rationed silence. The women mend clothing with scraps of sinew and torn hide, their fingers moving automatically, eyes vacant. It is a scene of rest, but not of peace. You feel your own wounds throb, the bite in your arm, the scratches from branches, the bruises from falls in the mud. The pain is sharp, but it grounds you in the present. It is your body's way of reminding you that you are still alive, still here, still expected to pull your weight tomorrow and the next day and the next. There is no sympathy for the wounded. There is no time. Sometimes you think about what it would be like to truly rest, to lay on a bed that was not a pile of damp leaves or a patch of frozen earth, to let sleep take you for hours instead of minutes, to wake refreshed instead of more tired than when you closed your eyes. You have heard stories about soft beds and warm rooms, but those are stories for other people in other worlds. A shadow passes in front of you, one of the elders, limping, muttering to himself. He glances your way, eyes narrowed with suspicion or envy. You cannot tell which. Here, exhaustion is not a private matter. Everyone watches. Everyone measures the weakness in others as a warning or an opportunity. You force yourself to stand, to stretch, to move your body before it seizes up completely. The sky is already shifting, the light fading, another day slipping away with nothing to show for it but hunger and fatigue. There is still wood to gather, traps to reset, small errands that cannot wait. You join the others in these chores, your body on autopilot, mind drifting in and out of focus. The day blurs into evening, and the evening into night. There is no line between waking and sleeping, only brief pauses, a few stolen moments with your eyes closed, head against a tree, breath coming slow and shallow. You dream, sometimes, quick flashes of food, of warmth, of laughter that does not end in silence. But the dreams fade quickly, replaced by the hard reality of cold earth and colder air. When night finally comes, you huddle close to the dying fire with the others, fighting for a spot that is neither too smoky nor too exposed. You wrap your blanket tighter, tuck your knees to your chest, and pretend, just for a moment, that you are safe, that you are rested, that tomorrow might be different, but deep down, you know better. Rest is a story you tell yourself between chores, a lie you cling to because the alternative is unthinkable. You let your eyes close for a few moments more, listening to the sounds of the camp, breathing, coughing, the restless shifting of tired bodies, and let yourself drift, not to sleep, but to the next task, the next day, the next long, weary march toward nothing. You know that when the sun rises, you will be just as tired as you are now, maybe more, but you will get up anyway, because that is what is expected. That is what you do. That is all there is. You know better than to expect your gear to last. Everything you own is a battlefield veteran, scarred and failing, and you are its only medic. There is no store, no trader with a sack of shiny new tools and garments just waiting for you. You have what you have, and you make it last, or you do without. That is the law of the woods, as cruel and ancient as hunger. Your moccasins are the first to demand attention. You take them off, inspecting the frayed edges and the holes where mud and water slip through every morning. The soles are little more than a suggestion, patched again and again with bits of bark, scraps of hide, sinew that was better suited for something else. You sit cross legged, numb fingers wrestling with a bent needle, trying to pull thread through leather that is stiff with dirt and old sweat. The repairs are never perfect. The stitches are uneven, and you know that. By tomorrow, some will have already ripped open again. Still, you keep sewing. Every extra day you can squeeze from these moccasins is a day your feet are not completely ruined by sharp stones or the chill of the earth. The pain of sitting hunched over is less than the pain of walking barefoot. Next is your clothing, a ragged shirt, a coat that barely holds together, a pair of trousers that look more like a failed net than proper pants. There are patches over patches, the original fabric visible only in stubborn little corners. You use what you can find: deer sinew, twisted plant fibers, the odd bit of cloth scavenged from someone who has died or disappeared. There is no sentimentality about clothing here. Every scrap has a purpose, every garment a history that is both too personal and too common to mention. Your fingers ache from pushing the needle through thick, stubborn hide. Sometimes the needle breaks, and you have to scramble to find another, praying you do not lose it in the mud or the gloom. Every tool is precious, irreplaceable. You remember the time you dropped a knife blade in the river and spent half the morning fishing for it, cursing your luck, the river, and yourself. There is no pride in the finished result. You hold your coat up to the weak light and see the places where the wind will still sneak through, where rain will find its way in. But it is enough. It has to be. Then you turn your attention to your weapons. Your bow is old, older than some of the children in the camp. The wood is warped from damp, the string patched so many times it sings a different note with each pull. You rub animal fat into the wood, flexing it gently, hoping it will last another hunt. Your arrows are a sad collection of mismatched shafts and points. You try to straighten the bent ones, retie loose feathers, sharpen the points on a rock that has seen better days. None of it is ideal. All of it is necessary. While you work, others drift by, each with their own repairs to make. You do not talk much. Conversation is another luxury, like salt or a soft bed. Sometimes an elder mutters about the old days, when a young person might be given a new coat or a proper knife as a rite of passage, not as a desperate prize pulled from the cold fingers of the dead. You do not bother to ask for stories anymore. You know how they all end. A child tugs at your sleeve, asking for help with a broken snare. You show her how to twist the cord, how to knot it tight enough to hold a rabbit, if any rabbits ever bother to stumble into it. She nods solemnly, as if you are passing on great wisdom when all you are doing is teaching her how to lose less often. Evening drags on, the fire a dim orange ghost of warmth in the center of camp. The women mend blankets, the men shape new spear tips from whatever wood or bone can be spared. Everyone works. No one is idle. Idleness invites envy and anger, and both are best avoided. You think about what would happen if your coat finally failed, if your bow snapped in the middle of a hunt, if your moccasins simply dissolved into the mud. You imagine the slow, humiliating spiral toward uselessness, the way the tribe would look at you, the way your children would look away. You sew a little faster, tie each knot a little tighter. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. Someone coughs. The world is falling apart, stitch by stitch, and your only answer is to hold it together a little longer. Night deepens. You finish your work, such as it is, and tuck your meager tools back into their hiding place. Tomorrow, something else will break. Tomorrow, you will fix it again, or you will learn how to do without. There is no other way. You pull on your patched moccasins, your ragged coat, and step out into the night. The wind is cold, but at least for now, it cannot quite reach your skin. You allow yourself one brief moment of satisfaction, not pride, never pride, just relief that you have bought yourself another day, maybe even two. Every evening, the fire is the axis around which your whole threadbare world spins. It is the closest thing to a promise the camp can offer: a little warmth, a little light, a chance to see one another's faces instead of just shadows moving in the half dark. Yet even the fire is never safe, never certain, never quite enough. The fire is both sanctuary and source of dread. Its glow draws everyone in, but also reminds you of how much is lacking. You watch as the people gather, one by one, each carrying their bundle of worries. They settle in silence, the circle tightening as the cold deepens, shoulders hunched, hands extended to the unreliable warmth. The fire crackles, spits, throws up sparks that drift up into the night and vanish. There is always the fear that tomorrow you will run out of wood, out of dry kindling, out of the meager fuel that keeps the night at bay. Smoke is your constant companion. It stings your eyes, worms its way into every thread of clothing, and settles in your hair, making you smell like burnt dreams. You shift position, trying to escape it, but the wind always finds you. Someone coughs, a wet, rattling sound, and everyone looks away. Coughing is never just a nuisance. It is a warning, a threat, a shadow that could mean sickness, weakness, death. The firelight makes the world both smaller and bigger. Within its glow, you can see the lines etched deep into every face: hunger, fear, a weariness too old for words. Beyond the ring of light, the woods loom, black, watchful, uncaring. Every crack of a branch, every distant howl, every gust of wind becomes a reason for the heart to stutter. You remember the old stories told by elders who pretended to believe them. Stories of how fire was a gift from the spirits, a shield against all evil. You know now it is just another fight, just another thing that can be lost. Sometimes people try to talk. A child asks for a story, and someone obliges, always the same tales, worn as the blankets wrapped tight against the night. They talk of heroes and clever animals, of magic and miracles, but even the children can hear the hollow echo in the telling. There is no magic here, only the fire and the long shadows and the scraping of empty bowls. Food is prepared at the fire, such as it is. A few thin roots, maybe a scrap of squirrel, the last handful of berries. The smell should make your mouth water, but you are too tired for hope, too used to disappointment. You eat quietly, watching the flames, thinking about how much more you could do if only you had more food, more wood, more everything. Every so often, a burst of laughter escapes, a joke about the cold, about the wolves, about the state of someone's shoes. The laughter sounds desperate, forced. It flickers and dies, snuffed out by the reality pressing in from all sides. Someone starts to hum a song, but the tune wanders off and gets lost, leaving only the crackling of the fire and the whisper of the wind. The fire is supposed to keep fear at bay, but it only sharpens it. You see how thin the walls of safety really are. You remember the night when the flames went out and everyone huddled together, certain that death would slip in with the darkness. You remember the way the fire dances, always hungry, always threatening to die if not fed. It is just like you. You look up at the sky. Stars peer through the smoky haze, cold, remote, indifferent. You wonder how many other fires are burning tonight, how many other people are clinging to the same small warmth, fearing the same long cold. The stars do not answer, they never do. There are chores even here. Someone must feed the fire. Someone must fetch more wood. Someone must watch for sparks that could leap and set the world ablaze. You do your part because not doing it means inviting blame, and blame is as deadly as frost. Every scrap of fuel is counted, every stick a treasure. Sometimes, when the pile gets too low, you can feel the collective panic rising. What will happen if the fire dies? What will happen if you cannot start it again? You know the answer. The fire is all that stands between you and the dark. You guard it like life itself, because in the end, it is the same thing. When sleep finally comes, it is always near the fire, one eye open, every muscle tense, your back aching from the cold ground. You sleep lightly, never deep, always ready to jump at a strange noise, always afraid that the fire will be gone when you wake. Tomorrow, you will rise and coax it to life all over again, just as your ancestors did, just as you always will. There is no ending, no victory, only the ongoing battle with the dark, with the cold, with the endless need. The fire is the center of your world, but it is a world made of fear, scarcity, and the stubborn refusal to let the night win. You stare at the flames a little longer before finally closing your eyes and hope, not for warmth, not for safety, but simply that the fire will still be burning when you wake. When the fire dies down to embers and the last scraps of food are gone, the real work of the night begins. Keeping watch, keeping quiet, keeping alive. If daylight is ruled by hunger and drudgery, the night is ruled by fear. It is a fear as old as the trees, as patient as the river. It waits outside the ring of firelight, in the places where the darkness never quite leaves. The camp is small, but you feel even smaller. Every person's voice drops to a whisper after sunset, as if words themselves might draw trouble from the forest. Children learn young not to cry at night. A single wail, a careless laugh, a sudden shout, any of these could mean disaster. The quiet is brittle, anxious, full of listening. You lie on your side, blanket pulled up, eyes half open. The night is full of noises, the wind moaning through the trees, the soft pad of animal paws, the creak and snap of frozen branches. But it is the sounds you do not hear that worry you most. Somewhere out there, always out there, are other people, strangers, enemies, neighbors turned threats by hunger, by old grudges, by the simple math of survival. You have learned to tell the difference between the rustle of a squirrel and the careful step of a man. The latter is always slower, more deliberate. You catch your breath at the slightest hint, a broken twig, a shift in the undergrowth. Your hand strays to your knife, the hilt warm from being gripped so often. The bow is within reach, arrows lined up like sad little promises. You know you are not the only one awake. The elders talk of a time when strangers were rare and meetings meant feasting, not fighting. You know those days are gone. Now, every group you do not recognize is a threat, every unknown shadow a possible killer. You have seen what happens when vigilance fails. You have buried the evidence. The patrol is a thankless job. Two at a time, you take turns circling the camp, eyes straining in the darkness, ears tuned for the unnatural. Sometimes the only thing you catch is cold. Sometimes it is worse. You remember the time, not so long ago, when three men from a neighboring band slipped in and stole half the winter's dried meat. No one heard them. No one saw them. By the time morning came, all you found were the prints in the snow and a quiet, wordless rage that still simmers in your chest. Every night, the possibility of violence hangs overhead like a low, heavy cloud. Sometimes you see signs in the morning, footprints, broken branches, a scrap of cloth. You say nothing because there is nothing to be done except keep watching, keep waiting, keep fearing. Some nights, someone in the camp does not wake up, taken by the dark without warning or trace. On those days, you all become a little quieter, a little more suspicious, a little less willing to trust. Even within the camp, trust is a fragile thing. Hunger breeds desperation, and desperation breeds betrayal. You have seen what it does to people: friends who become thieves, families who hoard, eyes that once looked at you with kindness, now narrow and calculating. Every person is a possible danger, every shadow, every silence, every offer of help. There are rituals for safety, but you do not really believe in them. Smoke from burning herbs, painted lines on the ground, whispered prayers to spirits who, if they exist at all, have long ago turned their backs. Still, you go through the motions because doing nothing feels even more dangerous. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and uneasy. Every muscle remains tense, ready to leap up at a sound, at a scream, at the sudden hot press of a stranger's breath in the dark. You dream of walls, of fortresses, of safety that is more than a word. But the dreams fade when you wake, and you are back in the open, exposed to whatever the night has decided to send. Morning is always a small victory. When the sky finally starts to lighten and the shapes around the campfire resolve back into familiar faces, you feel an almost physical relief. Another night survived, another round in the never ending game of vigilance. But there is no celebration, just the knowledge that tonight it will all happen again. You think sometimes about what it must be like to sleep without fear, to drift off without a hand on your knife, to listen to the wind without wondering if it carries a footstep or a threat. Maybe there are places where such things exist. Maybe not. Here, all you know is the fire, the dark, and the eyes you cannot see, watching, always watching, just out of reach. As the sun rises, you pull yourself up, shake off the night as best you can, and prepare for another day. But the fear stays with you, quiet and sharp, a second skin that will not come off, no matter how hard you try. If you ever forget how fragile you are, the sickness will remind you. It does not matter if you are young or old, strong or clever. Illness is the invisible hand that grips the camp, squeezing tighter as the days pass. It comes in the chill of the morning, in the cough that will not go away, in the ache in your bones that settles deeper each night. It is the price you pay for living in mud, eating little, sleeping never, and waking always afraid. It starts small: a sneeze, a sniffle, a scratch that festers when it should have healed. Maybe you think it will pass. You have seen worse after all, but you know the pattern by heart. First, the cold shiver, then the heat, then the weakness that spreads through your limbs until the thought of standing up seems as impossible as hunting a deer with your bare hands. Your body aches in new and creative ways. Every movement is a negotiation, every breath a tiny gamble. You are not alone. Everyone in camp has something wrong with them. Children's faces are smudged with snot and dirt. Elders do huddle together, racked by coughs that sound like breaking sticks. The women press hands to swollen bellies, praying that pain is not a sign of worse things to come. Cuts do not heal, bruises do not fade. Teeth rot and break leaving people to chew with their gums or not at all. When you get sick, there is no escape. The best you can hope for is a few leaves boiled in water, a poultice made from roots and hope. If the camp has a healer, she does her best, but her best is not much. She mutters prayers to spirits who do not answer, mixes remedies whose taste is worse than their effect. Sometimes she gets lucky and a fever breaks. Sometimes the sick just disappear from the fire one night, their blankets left folded in a silent accusation. Injury is even more cruel. You are always hurting in small ways and large. A twisted ankle from a hidden root, a cut from a careless knife, the slow, grinding pain in your shoulder from carrying too much for too long. The wolf bite on your arm oozes and throbs, but you have nothing clean to wrap it with, no salve to dull the pain. You grit your teeth and hope it will not turn black. You have seen what happens when it does. Sometimes you think of stories, stories of warriors who shrugged off wounds, of heroes who kept fighting after losing half their blood. You know better. No. You have watched strong men die from scratches, watched children fade from nothing more than a cough. You have seen flesh turn the color of old bruises, smelled the rot that means the end is coming. Nobody wants to talk about the sick, as if ignoring them might keep the sickness away. But you all watch. From the corners of your eyes, you notice who is moving slower, who cannot eat, who coughs blood into the fire and tries to hide it. The sick try to stay useful, mending, fetching, anything to prove they still belong. You let them because you hope someone will let you do the same when your time comes. Death is quiet here, not dramatic or glorious, just a slow fading, a gradual withdrawal. The body gives up before the spirit does. By the time someone is gone, it feels almost like a relief. For them, maybe. For the camp, definitely. Another mouth to feed, another blanket to spare. The dead are mourned briefly, buried shallow, remembered only in what they left behind. A knife, a patch of fur, a story that no one wants to repeat. You check your wounds each day, poke at bruises, pick at scabs, sniffle and cough, and pretend it is nothing. You worry about fevers, about chills that settle in your chest and will not leave. You try to keep clean as much as the mud and cold will allow, but it is never enough. The camp is a stew of sickness and sweat. You breathe it in, live with it, carry it in your bones. There is always the hope that things will get better, that spring will bring new life, that the river will wash away the sickness, that a new healer will know a cure the old one did not. But hope is not medicine. Hope does not fix a broken bone or mend a rotting wound. Hope only helps you survive one more day, one more night, one more painful morning. You wake each day grateful only that your own breath is not yet rattling in your chest, that your own pain is not so great you cannot move. You do not pray for health anymore. You only pray to avoid the worst, to keep moving, to last a little longer than your enemies, sickness, injury, hunger, and time. This is the true companion of every pathfinder, not the bow or the fire or the stories, but the unyielding, unending ache of a body fighting against the world, losing, and refusing to admit it. There is a memory that you carry like a stone in your gut, heavier than any hunger or bruise, the rite of passage. If you are a pathfinder, it is not because you were born to it or because you wanted it. It is because you survived the ceremony, barely, and the scars have never faded. In the camp, nobody lets you forget it. Not that you ever could. It is a tradition passed down for generations, or so the elders claim. A tradition older than any song, any story, any promise of kindness. You hear people in far off places talk about coming of age as if it is a pleasant thing, a cake, a party, some tokens and applause. Here, it is simpler. You are thrown to the world and told to come back changed or not come back at all. Your own passage started on a day colder than most. You remember the elders gathering, faces painted, voices grave, acting as if they were sending you off to glory and not just to pain. The other boys and girls, some eager, some terrified, were stripped to their waists, handed nothing but the dullest of knives, and told, in words that left no room for protest, that survival was the only proof of worth. The ceremony was not about wisdom or skill, it was about endurance. The first test, a trek alone through the forest at night. No fire, no food, nothing but your own thin skin between you and the cold. You walked for hours, feet numb, eyes wide, every noise a threat. You tried to remember the stories, the ones that said spirits watched over you, but all you felt was the endless dark, the ache in your stomach, and the certainty that nobody would come looking if you failed. Some did fail. You do not talk about them now. Sometimes you see their mothers still glance at the woods, as if expecting a lost child to stumble out of the fog years too late. The next part was worse. The elders waited for you, sitting around a fire that you could not approach, not yet. They watched as you were tested, cut and branded, forced to run until your legs gave out, forced to fight with fists and sticks. Pain was the teacher, blood was the lesson. Any show of weakness became the stuff of legend, a story to haunt you for years. You remember the jeers, the gritted teeth, the way your wounds were prodded by mentors to see if you would flinch. You learned to hold your breath until your vision swam, to blink back tears because crying meant shame, and shame meant never living it down. You remember the cold water poured over raw skin, the bites of insects, the burning hunger, the endless hours of fear. And then, if you endured, there was the final test, a solitary night at the forest's edge, with nothing but your knife and your scars. You sat awake, fighting sleep, fighting the urge to run, listening to every sound, every branch breaking, every growl in the dark. You waited for the dawn and wondered if you would see it. For a while, you almost hoped you would not. When morning came, you staggered back, bloodied and shaking. The elders nodded, just once. You were given a new name, a new cut on your arm, a token that meant you had passed. It was not a celebration. There was no joy, only exhaustion. The camp watched you, not with pride, but with the cold measuring gaze reserved for the newly initiated. You were now expected to work harder, go farther, endure more. Years later, the scars are still there, on your body, on your mind. The others never let you forget. Whenever you limp, whenever you flinch, whenever you hesitate in the woods, someone reminds you of your right. Some say it makes you strong. Maybe it does. More likely, it just makes you tired. You sometimes see the next generation, skinny, scared, trying not to show it, glancing your way as their own ceremony approaches. You want to tell them the truth, that nothing magical waits on the other side, that pain does not make you wise, and that the world does not care whether you pass or fail. But you say nothing. Tradition is a harder thing to fight than hunger. So you watch, silent, as another round of children is sent into the night. You listen to their cries, their bravado, the way they pretend not to be afraid. You watch some come back, older and colder, and you know the shape of their dreams will never be the same. Others do not return, and the camp grows quieter still. You carry the right with you always. It lives under your skin, in your memories, in the way you move through the woods. When you face pain or fear, you remind yourself that it cannot be worse than what you have already survived. That is the only comfort the right gives, and it is not much. There are times, sitting by the fire, staring into the dark, when you wonder what kind of world needs ceremonies like this. But you know the answer. It is this world, hungry, cold, and unforgiving. You do not have to like it. You only have to survive it. Winter arrives not as a surprise, but as a slow, grinding inevitability. The sun vanishes earlier each afternoon, the light shrinking until the world is nothing but gray for hours, and then black for even longer. Cold seeps into everything, your clothing, your bones, your thoughts. The forest, already stingy, now holds its breath, locking away every last scrap of life until it decides you are worthy, or until you are gone. You do not need a calendar to tell you winter is here. You feel it in your joints, in the way the wind slices through your patched coat and lodges in your marrow. The ground is hard, the snow shallow but relentless, drifting into every hollow, weighing down every branch, icing over every path you once took for granted. The mud and rain of autumn are gone, replaced by a brittle world that cracks and snaps with each step. Every chore is a battle. Fetching water means breaking ice with numb hands, scooping slush that tastes of old wood and rot. Gathering wood becomes a scavenger hunt, each stick a treasure, each armload a minor miracle. Even the fire feels colder, an illusion, maybe, but one you cannot shake. You huddle close, as if you could crawl inside it, but the cold is patient and always finds a way in. Food is the main enemy now. If autumn was a season of scarcity, winter is a season of absence. Traps are empty, trails are hidden, and every animal in the woods has learned the same lessons you have. Keep quiet, keep hidden, keep your head down. You dream of feasts you never had, fat haunches of meat, thick stews, sweet berries. You wake up with your mouth dry and your belly cramping. The children cry more now, and the elders stop talking altogether, withdrawing into their own private, silent wars with hunger. You ration everything: a handful of dried roots, a single strip of leathery meat, a thin soup made from bones boiled so many times there is nothing left but cloudy water and memories. You cut pieces in half, then in half again. You pretend not to notice when someone takes less, when someone gives their share to a child, or to someone even weaker. There is a math to this misery, and you learn it by heart. Who needs most? Who deserves most? Who is likely to last another week if you give them just a little more? Sleep is not a comfort. The cold sneaks into your dreams, and you wake shivering, teeth rattling, limbs curled tight. You pile on every scrap of cloth and fur you can find, but it is never enough. In the morning, you peel yourself from the icy ground, feeling as stiff as the branches outside. You are tired from the moment you wake, and you know tomorrow will be worse. You measure days by the number of small disasters: a snapped bowstring, a cracked pot, the fire that will not start, the sudden, terrifying silence when a cough is followed by nothing. You keep busy because to sit still is to feel the cold settling in for good, to hear the whispers that say maybe this is the year you will not make it. The forest does not care. The river does not care. The sky, heavy with snow, does not care. All you can do is endure stubbornly, refusing to give the winter what it wants. You remember sometimes how other people live: settlers with stone chimneys and fat larders, traders with goods from far off lands, stories told by travelers who claimed to have never been hungry a day in their lives. You try not to hate them. It does not help. You talk less now, saving your breath, saving your words. Sometimes someone tries to lift spirits: a song, a joke, a story of summers past, but it feels like too much effort. Laughter is as rare as meat. Even the dogs curl tight and whimper, dreaming of a world where the sun never leaves. The nights are the hardest. The dark is thick and unbroken, except for the dim circle of the fire, which feels smaller every day. You lie awake, counting the breaths of those around you, listening for the changes: a shiver, a moan, a silence that lasts too long. You think about what you will do if someone does not wake up, how you will carry their body, what you will tell the children, how you will make their share last just a little longer. You do not hope for spring. Hope is for people with choices. You just want to last until the world thaws, until the river runs again, until something green pushes through the ice. You promise yourself that you will do better next year, set more traps, gather more roots, find a way to make the fire last. You make plans you know you will not keep, because making plans feels like fighting back. When dawn finally comes, pale and weak, you are still here. not because you are strong or clever or chosen, but because you are too stubborn to lie down and let the cold have you. You rise, numb and aching, and start another day, the only victory winter ever allows. By midwinter, the line between hunting and begging the forest for mercy grows thin. You wake up hungrier than you were the day before, body brittle with cold, muscles trembling from days without enough food. Still, you go. You must. Hunting is not a choice, it is a sentence. The rituals of hunting are long gone. Gone are the days when you tracked deer for hours, moving quietly through thick green undergrowth, confident there would be something at the end of the trail. Now every hunt is a gamble you know you are losing. The animals are ghosts, hidden, wary, half starved themselves. You move through the snow like a shadow, slow and desperate, following the faintest trace, a single broken twig, a hollow in the snow, scat so old it crumbles at your touch. You are not alone in the woods. The wolves are hungrier now, bolder. You see their prints overlapping your own, circling your snares, sniffing at the edges of your tracks. You know they watch you, calculating, waiting to see which of you is weaker. Sometimes you wonder if they see you as a rival or as prey. Your gear is as tired as your body. The bow creaks in the cold, its string threatening to snap with every pull. Your knife, dulled by bone and ice, cuts more poorly each day. You feel the cold through every seam in your patched moccasins, and you do not bother to check your fingers for frostbite anymore. You know the color of dying flesh by heart. You set traps with hands so numb you barely feel the twine. The bait is laughable, some leftover bones, a pinch of moldy dried meat, a crumb of what used to be food. You know the animals are not fooled, but you cannot help trying. Sometimes you even check old, abandoned traps, hoping to find the bones of something that got caught and died weeks before. Bone broth, you tell yourself, is still better than nothing. Sometimes the hunt brings a cruel reward. A thin rabbit, ribs sharp beneath its fur, barely more than skin and bone. A bird, flightless and wild eyed, too cold to escape. You feel no pride as you kill. There is no glory, no song to be sung about the great hunt. There is only the grim arithmetic of survival. How many mouths can this feed? How many days will this tiny scrap keep the worst of hunger at bay? If the traps are empty and your luck runs out, you eat whatever you find. Roots so bitter they burn your tongue, bark scraped from trees, insects, if you can find them under the snow. Sometimes you chew on leather just to trick your stomach into feeling full. There is no shame in this, only the unspoken fear that next time even the bark will be gone. Danger is a constant companion. You move quietly, alert to every sound, the crash of ice falling from a branch, the sudden hush when the wind drops. You listen for the soft, heavy breath of a bear woken too early, the distant howling of wolves. Every shadow might be death. You know better than to think yourself safe, even for a moment. The days are short, the cold relentless. You push yourself farther each time, out beyond the old boundaries, deeper into the woods than is wise. Sometimes you lose your way and must fight panic, following your own fading tracks back through the gray dusk. You know stories of hunters who vanished in storms, never to be found, bodies swallowed by snow, remembered only when spring uncovers their bones. When you return to camp, you are careful to show everything you have caught, no matter how meager. You display your prize, a bird, a root, a stringy squirrel, with the same weary resignation as all the others. The children come first, then the old, then whoever worked hardest that day. There is no feast, only division. You eat what is left, savoring the taste of anything that is not memory or hope. Sometimes there is nothing at all. You sit by the fire, stomach hollow, watching the flames devour the last of the precious wood. You promise yourself you will do better tomorrow. You promise those who depend on you that you will not let them starve. You tell yourself quietly that you believe it. The truth is simpler. You will do what you always do. Go out, set traps, follow tracks, pray for luck, and come back with what you find or with nothing. You will fight the hunger with every trick you know. You will watch others fail, and you will wonder when your own turn will come. There is no lesson in this, no wisdom to pass on. Hunting is not a story. It is a slow, grinding war with the world, and the world is winning. Every bite you take is a victory you cannot afford to celebrate. You eat, you survive, and you wait for the next morning, hoping it does not come too soon. Hunger and cold do not only gnaw at your flesh, they gnaw at the bonds that hold your people together. You would like to think that suffering brings out the best in everyone, that shared hardship turns a camp into a family. But you know better. Misery is a wedge. It splits people apart as easily as it splits wood. There was a time when laughter lived in the camp, or at least when people pretended. Now, conversation has turned thin and sharp, words more like weapons than comfort. Every decision, no matter how small, can ignite an argument. Who gets the largest share of food? Who is too sick to work? Who failed at hunting, at mending, at watching the fire? These questions are never answered to anyone's satisfaction. Grudges simmer quietly, then boil over in sudden, angry bursts. You notice it most in the evenings when you return from hunting or gathering. The women sit together, voices low and bitter, their glances hard as stones. The men watch each other, each measuring who is weakest, who is next to fall behind. The elders grumble about the old ways, but even they know that tradition is little help when the food is gone and the firewood is running out. Children sense the tension and keep out of sight, whispering among themselves, growing up on stories of resentment instead of tales of unity. There are arguments over nothing. Someone claims you have hidden food for yourself. Someone else blames you for scaring away the game. Every mistake becomes a potential betrayal. Every disappointment is an accusation. You defend yourself, softly at first, then louder. But even you begin to wonder if you could have done more, if you should have risked more, if you are somehow to blame for the fact that the world no longer cooperates. Disagreements are not just about food. Old slights resurface. You hear two cousins fighting over a debt owed from a summer long past. One claims a knife was stolen, the other swears it was a gift. The dispute is pointless, but it fills the empty hours and keeps their minds off their hunger. Another pair bickers over the best way to lay a snare, each convinced the other is an idiot, neither willing to listen. Even the simplest tasks become battlegrounds. Some resent the elders, claiming they eat too much and do too little. Others insist the young are lazy, that they do not know real hardship, that they have not earned their place around the fire. There is talk, quiet and venomous, about what will happen if the worst comes, who will be sacrificed for the sake of the rest, who will be sent away so that others might have a better chance. These conversations are whispered, but you hear them. Everyone does. Sometimes the anger turns physical. You see two brothers come to blows over a broken arrow. Their fists land without much force. Their arms are too weak, but the blows leave bruises that last for days. Afterward, they avoid each other, shame and resentment mixing in their eyes. No one steps in to mediate. There is nothing to say, no way to make peace while the hunger burns. Trust is a fragile thing. You find yourself watching your back more than you used to. You hide your better knife, sleep with it under your arm. When you leave camp to hunt, you glance over your shoulder, wondering who might follow you, who might be desperate enough to make you disappear in the woods. You hate yourself for these thoughts, but you do not stop having them. There are still moments of kindness, small and flickering. Someone shares an extra scrap of meat with a child. Someone helps patch a coat or mend a boot without being asked. But these moments are thin and easily broken. One harsh word can ruin an entire day. You understand deep down that no one is to blame. It is not your cousin's fault, nor your neighbor's, nor even your own, that the world has become so hard. But understanding does not make the bitterness fade. It does not fill empty stomachs or warm, cold bodies. It does not stop the fights, the accusations, the slow unraveling of what little unity remains. At night, you lie awake and listen to the silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant coughs of the sick. You wonder what it would take to make things better. More food, more warmth, a miracle, a leader strong enough to inspire faith instead of suspicion. But these thoughts are as empty as the soup pot at the end of the meal. In the darkness, you cling to what little connection you still feel, your family, a friend who still speaks kindly, the memory of better days. You remind yourself that survival is not just about hunting or sowing or enduring pain. It is about holding on, however weakly, to the ties that make you human. Even as they fray, You do your best to keep them from breaking completely. Tomorrow will bring more work, more cold, more hunger, and almost certainly more arguments. But for now, you close your eyes, grit your teeth, and tell yourself that you will not be the first to give up. Not yet. It is strange how quickly loss becomes routine. The first time you lose someone, a friend, a sibling, a child, you feel like the world itself has ended. You stagger through the days, clutching at scraps of memory, half expecting to hear their voice on the wind or see their shape around the fire. You tell yourself it will get easier. The truth is, it does not. You just get better at pretending. The winter drags on, cold and endless, and people start to disappear, not with drama or ceremony, but quietly, slipping away in the night, gone before the sun rises. Some die slowly, sickness hollowing them out, breath rattling in their chest, eyes turning distant as the rest of the world pulls back. Others go fast, a fever, a wound that will not heal, hunger that crosses the final, invisible line. Sometimes a person simply leaves camp and never comes back. You do not ask where they have gone. You already know. Grief is not a private affair here. Everyone sees it, everyone lives it, but nobody talks about it for long. There is work to be done, mouths still left to feed, chores that do not stop just because your heart is cracked and leaking. If you cry, you do it quietly, head bowed, shoulders shaking just enough for a friend to pretend not to notice. You bury the dead shallow if the ground is not too frozen, and you do not linger at the grave. Standing still is dangerous in winter. The camp gets smaller. Faces that have always been there suddenly are not. Children stop asking where their mother is or why their brother's shoes sit empty by the fire. The elders look even older, their stories shorter and sadder. Some days, you wake up and wonder how many fewer voices you will hear by nightfall. The silence grows, spreading like frost. You try to remember who you were before the world narrowed to survival. Once you had dreams, plans for the spring, hopes for a good hunt, fantasies of laughter and music around a crowded fire. Now, your only goal is to make it through another day, to keep the next loss at bay for a few hours more. You tell yourself hope is dangerous, a trick played by the mind to make the world seem less brutal than it is. Still, a tiny piece of you hangs on to it, stubborn and stupid, refusing to die. Loneliness grows even in a crowd. You sit by the fire with the others, but the space between you all has widened, filled with things you dare not say. You miss the ones who are gone, but you also miss the person you used to be, the one who believed things could get better. Now you are someone else, harder, quieter, haunted. You laugh less. You speak only when you must. The world has shrunk to the size of your own fear. You carry loss in your body. Your back aches. Your hands shake. Your eyes sting from too many sleepless nights. Hunger and cold gnaw at you, but grief is worse. It lives in your chest, heavy and stubborn. Some days, it is all you can do to put one foot in front of the other, to get up and fetch water, to go into the woods in search of food you know you will not find. You wonder how much more you can take. There are moments, brief, sharp, when you let yourself hope. Maybe spring will come early. Maybe the river will thaw and fish will return. Maybe someone who left will come back. Maybe, maybe, maybe. Each time reality intrudes, another grave, another empty bed, another child's voice lost to the cold. Hope is a dangerous thing, but you cling to it anyway, because the alternative is a darkness deeper than winter. At night, the fire burns lower, the circle tighter. You watch the flames and remember the faces of the ones who are gone. Sometimes you talk to them, soft words, nothing more than breath in the cold air. You tell them about the day, about the hunt, about the fights and the failures. You apologize for not saving them, for not doing more, for surviving when they did not. You know they do not hear you, you speak anyway. Other times you retreat into silence, staring into the dark beyond the fire, listening for footsteps that will never come. You feel the loneliness as a physical thing, pressing in, suffocating. It is not the fear of death that haunts you now, but the fear of being forgotten, of becoming just another story, just another name no one remembers. In your rare dreams, you walk through the forest, not hunting, not fleeing, but searching for something you cannot name, someone you cannot find. You wake up with tears freezing on your cheeks, your body curled tight against the night. You promise yourself you will keep going, not because you believe things will get better, but because stopping is worse, because there are still people left who need you, if only to remind them they are not alone. The winter will end, you tell yourself. It always does. The dead will be mourned, the living will endure, the world will turn, even if you no longer care where it is going. You close your eyes and listen to the silence. It is heavy, but it is not empty, not yet. Night falls, and the camp is nothing but a scatter of bodies huddled around a fire that sputters and sighs, doing its best against a universe that seems determined to freeze you from the inside out. You stare into the flames, lost in the kind of silence that only comes when everyone is too tired or too beaten down to pretend there is anything worth saying. This is when the questions start, quiet, corrosive, and as old as hunger. What is the point of it all? You ask yourself this in a dozen different ways, turning the thought over like a cold stone in your hand. You search for an answer in the fire, in the stories the elders used to tell, in the faces of the people around you. You do not find one. The fire only offers flickering shadows. The stories have lost their teeth. The faces are as tired as your own. You wonder how many generations have asked the same question, sitting by the same kind of fire, watching the sparks float up and vanish, hoping that something, anything, will make the next day easier than the last. Did your ancestors feel the same exhaustion? Did they wrestle with the same doubts? Or did they simply work until they dropped, too busy surviving to care whether survival was worth it? You look at the younger ones, their eyes big and hollow, skin stretched over bone. They watch you watching them, waiting for something: wisdom, comfort, hope. You have nothing to give. All you can offer is your presence, your stubborn refusal to disappear, your example of enduring for the sake of enduring. Sometimes the elders talk about the why as if it is obvious. For the people, for the tribe, for the land. But these words sound small in the face of so much cold and hunger. You think about the people you have lost, the ones who left without goodbye, the ones who died slow and silent. Was it worth it for them? Will it be worth it for you? You replay every mistake, every failure, every near miss. You remember the hunts that yielded nothing, the traps that snapped empty, the arguments that left everyone colder and hungrier. You remember the times you were selfish, hoarding a scrap of meat, telling a half truth, turning away from someone else's pain. The fire does not judge, it only burns, consuming what it is given until there is nothing left but ash. The questions press in from the darkness. What if tomorrow is worse? What if all this work, this pain, this relentless grinding forward is for nothing? You are not afraid of dying, not really. You are afraid of dying and having it mean nothing, of being just another name no one remembers, another handful of bones lost in the mud. You think briefly about the things that used to bring joy: a song sung around the fire, the smell of spring grass, the laughter of children who believed the world was big and bright and safe. Those things feel very far away now, as faded as your memories of warmth. You do not sing anymore. The world is too cold for songs. You glance around the fire. No one speaks, but you can feel that everyone is caught in the same spiral of thought, wondering if this life is just a mistake passed down through generations. If there is a better way somewhere out beyond the darkness, if there is even a point in wondering. The flames shrink. The wood supply is low. You watch someone prod the coals, hoping for a little more heat, a little more light, and you feel a bitter laugh bubble up inside you. This is what it comes down to: poking at dying embers, pretending you are still in control, even as everything falls apart. You think about leaving, striking out alone, letting the tribe and its endless cycles spin without you. But you know you will not. There is no safety in solitude, no food, no fire, no comfort. The world is not waiting to welcome you with open arms. It is waiting to eat you. So you stay. You do what you have always done: tend the fire, mend the traps, soothe the crying child, bury the dead. You let the questions burn in your mind until they become dull and familiar. You survive, not because you have found meaning, but because meaning does not matter here. Only endurance matters. You hope, quietly, that the next generation will not have to ask these questions. You know they will. You hope the fire will still be burning tomorrow. You know it might not. You stare into the flames until your eyes sting, then close them and drift into a sleep that is more like waiting than dreaming. Tomorrow, you will do it all again. Not because you want to, not because you hope for a miracle, but because this is life and nobody ever told you how to stop. Sleep comes eventually, though it is never the kind of sleep you used to imagine as a child. No soft bed, no comforting dreams, just the slow erasure of thought as exhaustion finally presses you down. Your body aches with a catalog of old injuries and new pains. Your mind churns with questions that have no answers. Somewhere between one shallow breath and the next, you drift out of the world of the fire and into the gray nowhere of restless night. But night is only a pause, not a reprieve. The cold never leaves you, it only waits, even in sleep. Your muscles tighten, your jaw clenches, your hands reach for weapons you cannot afford to let out of sight. There are always noises in the darkness: wind, animals, the shifting of someone beside you who cannot rest either. You flinch at every crack of wood, every distant howl, every half heard whisper. In your dreams, you walk endless paths through a frozen forest, searching for something you cannot name, never finding it, always waking with your heart thudding in your throat. And then, just as suddenly, it is morning again. The sky is gray. The air inside the lodge is damp and bitter, every breath sharp in your chest. Hunger gnaws at you even before you have opened your eyes, and your first thought is not, "What will today bring?" but "How much worse will it be?" You have learned not to expect things to get better. You do not make plans anymore. The only plan is to do what you did yesterday: survive one ugly hour at a time. You rise, and the aches in your back, your shoulders, your knees remind you that there are fewer and fewer days when you do not hurt. Your hands are swollen and raw from cold and work. You force yourself up anyway, because lying still is its own kind of death. The others stir, some slower, some not at all. You do not ask where the missing have gone. Tasks follow, the same as always. Stir the fire if there is anything left to burn. Drag yourself to the river for water that will make you sick but keep you alive a little longer. Gnaw on whatever roots, bones, or scraps you can find. Retie a broken snare. Patch a coat that is more whole than fabric. Rewrap the same old wounds with rags that stink of old sweat and older blood. You move through it all like a shadow, barely speaking, measuring your steps to waste as little energy as possible. You are not alone in this routine. Everyone moves in the same silent, desperate rhythm. Children do not play, they work. The elders barely rise at all, their eyes distant, their words few. The camp feels smaller every day. The world beyond the fire is infinite and empty. Even the woods seem to have given up, offering less and less each time you go out, as if they are tired of you too. Each day is a repetition of the last, only a little bit harder, a little bit colder, a little bit hungrier. When you manage to find something, a few nuts, a bird too weak to fly, a handful of bitter berries, there is no celebration, only relief that the end is not today. You learn not to hope for more. The arguments and suspicions persist, sharper now, as the pressure of survival squeezes away any softness that once existed. Fights start over nothing. Old resentments flare up. Someone accuses someone else of hoarding, or stealing, or simply not trying hard enough. You find yourself silent in the face of these accusations, too tired to argue, too numb to care. Survival is a cold, lonely business. Sometimes you allow yourself to remember what it was like to believe in the future. You recall stories of summer, of laughter, of dances around fires that seemed like they would never die. You try to picture a world where people woke up with enough food, enough warmth, enough hope to look forward to something beyond another day of surviving. The memory is faint and unreliable, like smoke that slips through your fingers the moment you try to hold it. Most of the time, you do not bother with such thoughts. They are just another way to be disappointed. By the end of the day, when you sit again by the fire, your hands trembling and your stomach aching, you know that tomorrow will be worse. You do not say it aloud. No one does. But the knowledge hangs heavy over everyone. Each new dawn is another spin of the same tired wheel, another turn in the endless cycle of hardship. You find a bitter comfort in the predictability of it. The world will not surprise you with kindness. You fall asleep to the same sounds: coughing, wind, a baby crying, the hollow hush of the woods pressing close around the camp. You sleep because you have to, not because you want to, and you wake only because you cannot avoid it. You know that the only miracle is that you still wake up at all. So you begin again. You gather wood, you fetch water, you hunt and mend and count the losses. You tell yourself, "At least I am still here." You do not let yourself think much further than that. There is no escape. The cycle spins on. This is what it means to be a pathfinder. This is what it means to live.